and welcome to the Fairmont Vancouver. I'm chairing this meeting today. I'm Tim Fitch, President of Invent in Canada. Today we have got a roundtable which is going to be a discussion on all things off-site manufacturing. But first we're going to have a sort of input presentation from Mark Porter from Nexi, who've been very much in the news in the past few weeks, very exciting. Well, I hope we have a great debate. It should be very interesting. I'm looking forward to it, and I'll hand over now to Mark.
All right, thank you. Okay, well, welcome. Thanks for listening to me for the next 10-15 minutes. I'm more interested in the debate afterwards, but just by way of introduction, my background, structural engineer, worked for many years in consulting, and I joined this company called Nexi almost exactly a year ago. Startup company doing off-site manufacture of panels, and invented by two brothers out of Saskatchewan, so mid-Canada. And they came up with a system of creating a structural insulated panel using proprietary polymer concrete on the outside faces rather than OSB or other products. A number of benefits to it, and then kind of joined with an entrepreneur 3 years ago, and we've gone kind of from strength to strength since then. What's really been interesting is the way that we've attracted people to us, and we kind of really focused on why and what is it about Nexi that drives us, and what is it that's our purpose beyond. Buildings, construction, number one cause of climate. We're all aware of climate change. Buildings is 39% of that, and many of you in the room are going to know this. I'm not going to dwell on this too much, but these are kind of some of the founding causes of why we think that there was an opportunity for Nexi to come in and disrupt the market potentially with our product. And we're very much focused on our carbon footprint as well. So we've done a lot of research around the embodied carbon in our product, and also the benefit that our product can give to the overall GHG and energy usage in our products. And so just really focused on that, and we continue trying to improve the way that we work with our panelized products. And then cement, concrete is a large emitter of CO2, and so yes, we're using a polymer concrete for its durability, and it's fast cure, and it's got a proprietary mix in it, which means that we can lift it off the casting bed within a matter of hours, which means we can produce a lot of panels, but there's no Portland cement in it, and so we're straight off the top, we're 30% lower, and as I said, we're actively looking at different constituents to put that into context. And then waste is another thing that we're really focused on, is minimizing construction waste on site, so that when we come with our panelized system, we can literally take the waste away with us in one bin load, and really minimize the waste and recycle as much as possible in plant. And then kind of the other focus around solving things for us at Nexi was lack of skilled labor. Continues to be an issue, shortage of labor. Lack of productivity, and materials volatility. And just a little aside there, the Nexite is our proprietary material, and we have no issues with material, but we have been affected, even though we like to think we're insular. Steel, plastics, FRP, like the material volatility is really acute right now, and definitely that is a factor. But we can bulk buy, and we can mitigate some of that by pre-purchasing. And then lack of affordability, increased demand in construction, all of those things as a summary really, and sustainability has led to us identifying an opportunity for us at Nexi. And so our solution is panelized solution, prefabricated off-site, a complete envelope system in one panel, substantially less carbon than concrete or steel. We've done some studies on multiple different models, and we've actually got data, and we're building data on every building that we produce, where we're demonstrating that we are both less embodied carbon and less energy usage with our products. Reducing on-site construction, really quiet site, addressing complex code requirements. We have the ability to put fire rating within our panel so that we can do zero lock lines very easily and things like that, so that really helps. And then collapsing all of the trades on site, we're a complete envelope system, and I've got some slides to explain that a little bit more in a bit here. And we collapse the complete envelope system into one panel. Consequently, faster build times, and our products are fire durable, obviously designed for earthquake, wind, and we have no biodegradables in our products, so that makes it very durable from that aspect as well. The verticals that we're looking at right now is multi-story, commercial, residential, high-performance envelope. We have a project in Nanaimo right now where we're doing 9 stories of envelope, high-performance envelope. Commercial retail has been a real niche for us, where we can help our end clients, such as Starbucks, the fast food restaurants, those kind of industries, banks, where they want to build really quickly so they can open their doors really quickly, but at the same time they want to be really environmentally conscious and sustainable, and they've set really aggressive carbon targets. And so we have a product that helps them achieve both those things, a faster build time and a lower footprint and lower energy use. Light industrial, we're looking at some projects there where we're a competitor to Tilt-Up, where there's a need for a higher performance envelope above kind of traditional Tilt-Up, we're a viable alternative to that. And then kind of looking down the road a little bit, we've definitely got our eye on the deep retrofit market. Again, it's kind of an extension to our high-rise envelope panels where we can replace the panels with our product. And single-family residential is on our radar, but we, perhaps unlike different prefabricated manufacturers, we see that as very competitive. We're not volumetric, we're panelized, and we would rather focus our efforts on the first 3 and get ourselves established in those before we focus on a highly customized, highly individual residential market. Or here in Vancouver, where it's wood frame for the mid-rise, multi-mixed-use residential. A panel doesn't suit that too well because that's light frame, and we've got a concrete-based SIP panel. So we just need to pick what we want. So just some insights to our panel. Some of you, I know, have seen this before, but it's really quite simple, like all the best inventions. We have a proprietary skin on the outside and the inside, and then an EPS Type 2 core. And then we put structure around the perimeter so that we can lift the panels off the bed. The panels come in 10 feet, 12 feet wide, and up to 40 feet long. And depending on the size that we're panelizing, and we need structure to resist wind load, lifting it off the bed, and then if we actually put more structure in, we can actually carry some gravity load, seismic load on it too. The external and internal faces, it's a flowable polymer concrete, so we can actually input a wide range of finishes onto our product, and because it's a very flowable grout, the quality of the finish is really, really good, and we can kind of put brick pattern. We're actually doing a very realistic wood grain pattern. We can tone it, we can paint it, we can do a whole bunch of things on the external surface. It's very hard, very durable, and it comes to site pre-finished, pre-painted, and just touch up at the corners where we connect it. On the inside, again, the panel itself is a drywall type finish, so ready for priming, painting. We can set boxes into the panel, cavities for boxes, cores through the panel, and again, once we finish the space, then it's just finishing up around the joints, making it good, and rather than a kind of a full fit out and finish. Depending on the usage, sometimes we will still fur out the inside. So a little bit more about what the panel is made up of. There's a number of different layers within that panel. Really, really quickly, kind of the outside skin, which is really durable, polymer concrete, and then an insulated core, and then a kind of steel frame or structural core. If we need to put utilities, we'll put that into the CNC machine in the plant, and we'll produce the panels, and then This is a section through the panel way. We a few things to note here, and I'm just going to stand up so that I can point on the screen. But so we have a couple of layers here. We have two types of net site, which is our proprietary polymer concrete. We have an ST, which is structural, a very high compressive strength, very fast cure, and then we have an FS, which is actually got some perlite in it and actually helps us to resist fire. So essentially, an inch gives us an hour, and so we can just rate that accordingly. And so that we just add that where needed, where we need a fire-rated wall. On this, that's on the inside. On the outside skin, we have these little channels here. The polymer concrete is effectively impermeable and acts as our rain barrier. But to, as a kind of a backup to that and allow for any wind-driven rain that happens to get through, we actually put in routed drainage channels just immediately behind that, and then allow for drips at any joints in the panel. The neck site and the EPS, we don't need any adhesives. The way we cast it, the way we pour it, is that we'll pour the outside with the pattern into a mold, and then we'll put the EPS into that. And as the neck site cures, it kind of forms a covalent bond. It draws itself up into the EPS, and we always get it. Whenever we test it, we always get a shear within the EPS, not in the bond layer, which means that we don't have to apply any adhesives, and we can eliminate the VOCs required with that. Yeah, so we've done a number of tests over the last 2-3 years. The plants are ISO 9001 certified. The panels can function as non-load bearing, or we can do it single story for sure. We can do load bearing. It's resistant to freeze thaw cycles because of the low water absorption, and then we put glass fiber mesh in those skins to help with tension resistance, so that it can bend and flex. And then we use connections at the corners, or in this case, where it's an envelope panel, we'll attach to the floor of this structure and just hang it as we go up the building. At the moment, we're using wet seals, so silicone joints between the panels to seal them. We're actively researching a dry seal alternative for that, because we think that would be faster and actually increase our construction time even more. For the building science people in the room, this really is our air barrier because of the low permeance, and then we have a 2-stage sealant on there. And we've had all of this tested. We've worked very closely with building science consultants such as RDH to have all of this verified, and we're actually currently going through a ICCES testing, which is code equivalency testing in the States, which will recognize our product much more easily than going through an equivalent code equivalency in each jurisdiction. I'm going to flick through these in the interest of time and come on to the Marriott, which is a hotel that's being built in Nanaimo right now. This came to us, it was already designed as a traditional construction, and we did a study on this at two or three things. We looked at how fast we could install it, what the improvement over the energy would be, and then kind of how we would fit it and match the branding. On all of those things, we found we could beat the original. We beat the energy performance by around 12%, bearing in mind we just did the envelope, not the whole space. We significantly increased the install time, and we were able to match the branding in terms of the finish to our panels. So we modeled all of that in 3 dimensions, and just quickly kind of give an overview of what we do. We panelize the whole building. We split it into repeatable. The more repeatable panels that we have, the better. And we can deal with insets and outsets and architectural features. But we panelize that building and then work through each panel. It's got a set of shop drawings which is manufactured in the plant. And then this is an image of the finished plant. And so we can put in all of these reveals. We can do the different finishes on the colour. And actually, on this project, we're installing the windows on site and shipping them vertically, so that they'll just go up with the windows pre-installed. That's where we're at right now. The first panels go on in about 2 weeks for us, and so we'll and we're hoping to have that done early next year. We're going to be like doing we want to be aiming to get a floor done a week, but we'll see how that progresses as we go through. It's a really tight, constrained site. And then I'll just quickly touch, and this has been a really quick, because I was just told to keep 10 to 15 minutes, just a little bit of a teaser really. Where we're headed. So we have one plant in Squamish, the founding plant in Moose Jaw, Saskatchewan. If any of you want to go and visit Moose Jaw, it's a great place to go. And then we just about to open Hazleton, which is in Pennsylvania, about 2 hours outside of New York, and we've got a number of projects in New York State that we're looking at. We're in discussions with another plant on Vancouver Island, and certainly there's a couple more there in the States. We're also talking to some in Texas and Florida as well. I think the important thing for us is demonstrating and proving that there's demand to keep the plant full. Once we get going producing panels, they're hungry beasts, and we need to make sure that there's adequate demand. And then this is something that's really come, and you'll have seen this, we achieved something quite remarkable in the last couple of months in terms of our funding. We achieved unicorn status, which means that we've been valued at over $1 billion. I think that's the right number, which is phenomenal for a company that's only 3 years old. A lot of that is to do with the anticipated demand, the interest in the prefabrication, but also our partners that we're partnering with on the technology front. And so we produce the panels, but we've partnered with Honeywell, Train, and a few others we're talking to right now, some other really big names, and we're working with their innovation groups. Stuart, you know this very well, but they're coming to us and they said, we really like your product, especially for this market where we can deliver a repeatable building that incorporates smart controls, design the system, put it all in skids, make everything modular, manufacturable, deliver the whole thing quickly, effectively, sustainably, and move it to market as fast as we can. So this has been really interesting. We have one particular client right now that has commissioned us to design a bespoke store for them using this methodology, and that's going to be rolled out all across North America. Really exciting for us. It's very small footprint, but it's hugely repeatable, and it gets the volume, and it will be a base load for us in the manufacturing plant. And we see this as a huge opportunity. We do what we do best. We make the panels. We work with them doing what they do best, and we bring it together and package it up and deliver it to site. And I think that is all I have to say. There's lots more that we could talk about, and I look forward to the discussion. But if I can get this to go to the next slide. That is all I have to say.
Okay, well, Mark, that was fascinating. It's a great primer, which I hope will be good debate around the table. Welcome, Stuart.
Thank you. So I was late.
Don't worry. I guess there's going to be some questions for Mark, and perhaps has anyone got a burning question they want to kick off with, or if not, I will start. Fantastic presentation, really, really exciting stuff. One of the issues that we come across in our strategic work, particularly with any kind of innovation, is, and you reinforced the point yourself, you're creating these fixed assets to create your wonderful panels, and they're hungry beasts. And how do you get the marketing to allow you to have sufficient volume to keep your assets working?
Great question. It's something that we're working through, actively working through. It is that balance between keeping the plants running at capacity and finding the demand. We've had to make some adjustments. I think we projected that we were producing so many square meters of panel daily, and reality has meant that we've had to adjust that. What we're finding and it kind of goes back to the markets that we pick. So the CRU market, we think if we can sign up with some of these key brands, will provide a constant baseline, because between them they have a number of stores that they want to roll out across North America. And so if we strategically put our plants where they need those and we lock them in, with a number of different ones, like I don't think we'd want to put all our eggs in one basket, but if we can have enough of those, that provides a baseline. The light industrial is also a real area of interest for us, because again, they tend to, especially with the likes of Amazon and some of these big storage places, there's a lot of panels to produce those buildings, and so if we can do that and provide an alternative to precast concrete, tilt up and others, Kingspan, then there's an opportunity for us there, and then balance that with kind of the more unique projects. We have the ability to do some one-off panels because it's such a flowable polymer concrete. We can actually make curvilinear forms, and we can do some really architectural stuff. That's not going to fill the plant, but it does create a high profile for us. And so if we've got one or two of those on the go at the same time as others, that generates interest, and hopefully the brand keeps going. One other piece that I'll say, and before I kind of stop there, is our executive team, Steve Sidwell and others, have been phenomenal at attracting big brand names, and that generates a lot of awareness. So Batman, Michael Keaton, Joe Flacco, football player, those kind of people. Jason McLennan, big green architect. Those kind of people just raise the awareness for us. And so when people start to think about prefabricated panels, high performance, then hopefully they'll think of us before they think of our competitors.
With the Marriott, how difficult or easy was it to get them to accept a change from the traditional that had already been designed into sort of your panelised modern method?
It wasn't that difficult, because we had a very friendly client who was interested in exploring alternatives. I think there was a pressure on schedule, and we could demonstrate that we could do that. There was a number of, actually more of the challenge for us was actually getting building permission, building control approval, making sure that we had code equivalency for the panel. It doesn't exist in the code. So we had to go through a bunch of tests, work with the RDH, work with a number of reputable firms, Scott and Simpson, others, to achieve that. Having done that, we now have a precedent that we can say, well, we did this and it's worked. That was the challenge, and still we're still finding certain things that we have to work through. Questions around, we want to draw electrical conduit through our EPS type 2, for instance. How do we do that in the plant or on site, things like that. So as we go, they're always solvable, but those are the challenges that we face. I think the other piece that we're facing, and this is just because of how young we are in the market, often we'll get schemes presented to us that have been designed for a traditional method of construction, and we have to then take them and change them to suit a panelised system, and that forces us into things that perhaps aren't the best suited to a panelised, repeatable system. Before I joined Nexi, I did quite a lot of mass timber and cross-laminated timber, and I think back to when that was just coming in the market, and it was the same thing, right? People say, I'd love to do this in mass timber, but I've designed it in concrete. You make it work. And so I think we're going through that as well. I think what I'm hoping that we'll start to see over the next year to 18 months is people will come and say, hey, we heard about your product, we like it, how can we work with it? What makes sense with the panelisation? What can we do, what can't we do? How do we make it?
So who do you think are the key drivers for that? The clients or the consulting engineers amongst us who are advising them?
I would say everyone around this table.
It's a cop out.
Well, so I think everyone has a part to play, frankly. Architects often have the vision, but if we don't have the contractors on board, or I don't have the owner on board, then it's really hard. Right? And or the mechanical consultants will say, well, what is this system? We never. Right. So I think, joking aside, everyone has a part to play.
So when you're doing a cell, I mean, do you have a toolbox that set of standard details and solutions for the various issues that you run up against?
We do. It grows every day.
Yeah.
Yes, we do. We're actively kind of developing that right now. Because it's growing, we're finding the best way of doing that is to work with the potential solution right up front. For us, it's a lot of investment and time. But what we're finding is that every building situation throws up a new scenario that we have to solve. So, but yes, we have a base catalogue of details.
And Mark, you mentioned that lack of skilled workers is a challenge.
Yeah.
Does that apply to the production only, or about the construction aspect? Do you need specialized workers for the construction itself? And do those come from your organization usually? Do you contribute to that stage, or once you supply the product, then it's up to the contractors to take care of that?
Yeah, actually, it's a tough market to hire in, full stop, I think, at the moment. And we have just had a huge hiring push for our plant in Squamish, and we've hired, I think, 50 people in the last month and a half, and we've gone through an intense training program on the plant floor. Really good supers, that's what we need, really good supers, and then they can supervise, and stations along the plant, so they're doing one task, and so it doesn't need to be such a high level of skill. But keeping and maintaining staff is key. Talking to Rick just earlier, culture is huge, and attracting people to our culture is really important. We have a big emphasis on staff wellness, staff investment, because we find that differentiates us amongst some of the others, and hiring the right people for that, and that's they're not that common. Good people that fly panels and stuff like that. So, yeah.
Do you have you talked to the dirt people? They do the same thing for interiors.
Yeah, we have spoken to Dirt, and we've actually spoken to the spin-off from Dirt, Folk Built.
Yeah.
And we've actually toured their factory, and there's discussions going on there. Yeah. For sure, I can't say too much, but yeah.
The sort of culture point that sort of you both hinted at is a big part of apprehension, I guess. How do we move forward as an industry, sort of more generally, with becoming more innovative, changing the way we do things, and stuff like that. It's been something my whole time in industry. All I've been told is that's not how we normally do it. And so, well, it doesn't mean it's the wrong way to do it now, is it?
Yeah.
How do we sort of try and sort of open it up so Mark isn't the only person answering questions? How do we sort of embrace change better as an industry, embrace a modern way of doing things, a more productive way of doing things?
To me, the first point is where we start from is communication. I don't think there's enough communication and sharing information between competitors and resources. I often find that people tend to protect their innovative ideas, almost as if then they lose that competitive advantage, which to some extent I can see that, but on the other side, it doesn't help the whole industry to move forward as fast as we could. I see that in my sector. I'm in construction. We do foundation piles, so we do drilling and grout injections, and we also work with chemical grouts. And the innovation process on that is far too slow, because again, there's not enough communication. I find that really tough to overcome. I don't know if that's shared between the others too, but maybe it's just my field. But
So just a question on the Marriott Hotel. Was your client, the way you got into that project, was it owner, design team, or construction team?
Construction team. So I think it's good for, I think it's public knowledge, so that the construction team was Omicron. And we've since bought Omicron. So it was, they were looking at the system and suggested this may be a way to help the construction. And then it was accepted by the client team after that. That's actually before my time, but yeah. I think just going back to your point about how you change things. I agree. Communication, being transparent. Like we're a new company. We don't have everything sorted out, but we welcome people working with us to sort those things out. And I think that really helps, rather than trying to keep it all. And obviously, there's certain things we can't share because it's proprietary. But I think being open and asking for, so we think this is a great idea. Work with us. We can work with it together. I think that really helps. But that's quite foreign in the construction industry.
There is a reticence. I mean, Rick, what's your experience of innovation? Is it?
Well, my view of this is it all goes back to the way the construction industry has been set up typically, and what's wrong with that. And, the whole idea of risk transfer is what causes all the trouble. And we've focused on agency construction management throughout, which is a highly collaborative and transparent way of doing it, and we want to move more into IPD, and that's, I think, that's where you need to start. Is the whole process needs to be collaborative between the owner's team, construction team, design team from day one. No point working in silos and then trying to go back and change it later.
Yeah.
So we have one of those going in Squamish right now, actually.
Oh, is that right?
Yes.
Yeah.
So I guess you see sort of that early contractor or early project team involvement right from the time the architect first gets involved. They've got the concepts
from
sketched out.
From square one, our business, $1.5 billion worth of projects. Almost all of them, or 95% of them, were involved at the same time the design team is hired, and that makes it a lot more collaborative. The issues are still that everybody's working under their own contracts, and there's too much of this and too much focus on risk transfer. Project risk belongs to the project, and why shouldn't everybody involved in that project be focusing on the best solutions for those risks? That's what the owner would be prepared to pay for.
So do you see is the resistance then the sort of conditioning from the owners, advisors, technical advisors, saying you've got to do it the traditional way because that's least risk for you? But of course, it's also what they're familiar with, isn't it?
It is. I mean, it's the whole, because that's the way we've always done it, feeling, and still way too much focus on low price equals value, which it doesn't. And so getting past that, I mean, our biggest sticking point are purchasing departments. We do a lot of public funded work, and that rigid, you must take the low price because that's what is value for the taxpayers, is just false, and that needs to change.
In the sort of public sector work that you're involved with, is there an absolute resistance to innovative technology if it isn't the cheapest?
Like I say, in the public side, it comes from what is going to protect my job, basically. If you do it the way it's always been done, how can you be criticized? If you step outside of that normal, what's expected process, and it doesn't work, now what? So I think it's changing. It's changing very slowly, but it has to. I mean, that's the way of the future.
But how often do those procurement teams see the end result and then compare that to the start and go, oh yeah, if I'd have done that better, maybe it wouldn't be 50% more at the end. Then there's little sort of, you know, that accountability. It's, oh, I've procured it, now it's your turn.
Yeah, and I mean that doesn't happen enough, and there's way too often politics that are driving the presentation of results rather than, you know, a real effort to see what was better.
Just reflecting on that, I think we've got two potential projects that we're looking at right now where they're both public procurement. One in US, one here, and we're actually being pushed by the public client as a potential solution because they're seeing demands on them to deliver high performance, low carbon. Like there's other things pushing them, you know, and so they're like, well, how do I make sure I achieve that without risking? So it would be interesting to see how that starts to drive that, because we won't achieve those results if we don't start thinking outside the box a little bit.
Procurement can really be used as a tool to help, not just as a way to get started. If done properly, if given the right time and you ask the right questions in the first place. Like you say, you know, decarbonisation and things like that, you know, that's what drives value for us as an industry now, not lowest cost.
Right.
And that's what we should be looking at a lot more.
So is there a question of changing the definition of value at the procurement stage?
Well, it's not just changing the definition of value. There's been plenty of definitions of value. It's helping procurement people understand how you then procure for value, which is a bit of a throwaway term that we use far too often in the UK because it still ends up being lowest cost. But it's about understanding that procurement doesn't mean 90% score has to be on price.
Yeah, and in federal government, it's procurement is part of their performance indicator.
Yeah.
If that's part of their focus and what they need to achieve in any fiscal year, then that drives that as well, right? Where it supports that higher cost.
But it is a massive culture thing. You know, I've procured a lot of stuff in my career, you know, a few £1 billion worth of stuff in nuclear, and none of it was on lowest cost, and all of it was a battle with directors and executives who didn't understand why, and I never understood why they would want to drive, you know, a first of a kind plant. You've got no idea how much it's going to cost, so why would I try and guess what the lowest cost is in day one?
I think on that, and reflecting on the previous conversations there, delivering innovation on a project, it comes down as well to the fundamentals of change management as well. You know, the whole team has to be on board from day one. They've got to go on the same journey and have the desire to see that outcome. So I think it really speaks to what was said before about the communication with the team and the collaboration. I think the architect has a big part to play in driving that sometimes, but it really depends on the individual team's dynamics.
Yeah, I think it's interesting having been involved, with mechanical, electrical, sustainability engineers, but having been involved with Nexia on some of these early projects, it's refreshing actually, because you get this whole team come together, right? And it's like you know where you're going, right? Even though Nexia producing only the panel, they're procuring everything else, and so that holistic approach, very much feels like that sort of nirvana of design, construction, fabrication, and we're all talking about speed as well, right? So there's that speed to construction. How do you make it more efficient? Less waste, and it's quite a, I would say it's been a refreshing process. And one of the things I'm interested to see where it might go was also into the existing building world, and I think we all know that that's the biggest challenge that that we're just scratching the surface of right now. But as a product, this looks to me like a product that could be very well suited to that existing building decarbonisation, right?
I was going to ask, is that the key driver that you're seeing for change and using other things like decarbonisation agenda, or is it the productivity, a bit of both?
I think decarbonisation is something that, you know, I still think it's got a long way to go, right? But that how do you do it, you know, in buildings, especially operational buildings, right? You know, I mean, that seems to be the biggest barrier to actually sort of doing anything in buildings is, you know, like you're shutting the building down, right? And so if we can come up with modular approaches and, you know, integrated envelope structure, MEP services that you can layer on the building and be in and out in a short period of time, you know, and not have to sort of, you know, take tenants in and out of spaces, then, you know, that to me is a solution. And what you have here is a system that's, you know, super insulated and airtight, and we can achieve a lot of those things, you know, with this, right? And I think that's kind of one of the places we really need to go there in a hurry.
I think with the off-site manufacturing part of that as well, with the ability to produce it and inspect it within a factory, you minimise the risk of thermal bridging that's not ideal and that kind of thing. You spoke in your presentation about the the emission side that buildings contribute, so, you know, across the globe. I think it's at 39% there. And if in a factory you can get that, you know, the insulation exactly right, the thermal bridging minimised, it really contributes to the overall, contribution over the life of the building of the energy use.
So, Stu, if I understood that bit right, you can see this being retrofitted to buildings to improve the thermal efficiency?
Yeah, well, I think, you know, in terms of the types of buildings, the sector of buildings that Mark's talking about as being a target, I see that as just, that's an overlay, right? Here, let's just kind of take the old cladding off, put the new on, and then do it quickly. And if we can integrate the services, and I think that's one of the things that we've seen, that, you know, even if we can't get all of the services within the panel, it pushes you to modularization of the services, because there's no point in, you know, being able to put an envelope in and then send plumbers and electricians in there for, like, you know, for half a year afterwards, right? You know, fitting it out like we fit out a regular building. What's the point of that? So even if you can't fit it in the panels, you still come up with modular approaches to the services that get built off-site at the same time, and they come in a kit of parts, and so it's that sort of, you know, approach to modular that you know, from the envelope then, you know, pushes into the services, and then you get the whole approach.
And we've seen a real interest in our retrofit, so taking the envelope panel that we applied to the Marriott, and then using that same principle for existing buildings. What we're looking to do is to reduce the overall weight of the panel, so it doesn't adversely affect the existing building, but keeps the thermal performance and the durability and everything else. So but we're actively looking, we're actively being encouraged to do that. And then, like Stuart says, the modular approach to the MEP as well. It kind of fits really well with that, and we've actually been kind of working together on how we do that with another partner here locally, just taking lessons from the hospitals, in fact, and making it into kits apart for other things, which is very interesting.
I think if you go back to some of the projects, you know, we've looked at here's the prototype building, and then by the time you finish, the mechanical system is actually 30% of the size of the prototype building, right? You know, there's different climate zones, you know, playing in there, but it's incredible just how much better you can make it, right? When you can deal, and you can trust the envelope. I mean, I think that's, you know, as a mechanical engineer, that's always been one of our most difficult challenges, is never been able to trust a building envelope, because you don't actually know that it's going to deliver, you know, what it says it's going to do in terms of air tightness and thermal performance and thermal bridging. There's always been this great unknown, and so there's always been this sort of, you know, layers of safety factor put into mechanical systems, and everybody kind of knows they're oversized, but hey, you know, you don't want to leave an unheated building, right? Whereas if you actually know what you're doing with the envelope, if you start with the envelope, then you can actually right size everything, right? And everything just, so that, you know, not only get speed, you get cost reduction in the MEP services.
So presumably it's taking that, if I've understood that correctly, you see that the modularisation of the envelope proves certainty for the design of the MEP.
Yeah, absolutely it does. If you know exactly which windows you're getting, and those windows aren't getting value engineered out, you know, through a shop drawing process or something like that, right? Or the, you know, the envelope's not getting, you know, like, you know, getting value engineered at the last minute, then you can actually, you know, you can trust in that, and you can hang your hat on it, and you can, you know, and that's that overall value solution, right?
Rick, when we were talking earlier, you said you do a lot of schools. Does this technology and the modularisation, do you see that being applicable to that type of building?
Yeah, I mean, we've done a lot of tilt-up schools in the past, so that would certainly fit in that area. We have kind of moved away from tilt-ups because of the increasing envelope requirements and basically having to defer everything inside. And so, doing that inside the panel would be a big advantage. We do we finished a couple of years ago a complex care home in Victoria, 320 bed. That very repetitive situation, I think, would be a real advantage. I think there's all kinds of things. I'm working with a group called it's CIOS2, Construction Industry OS2. It's kind of like Project 13 in Britain. They're right now working on a pilot project for a wafer factory, and also for these data storage farms. And something like this would really fit that kind of situation. They are involving Microsoft and PHP and all kinds of big companies in that, so that would be I can connect to that.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I've got it.
OS2, they're the guys down at Texas Uni.
Yeah, Prairie Dog.
Yeah, Prairie Dog, yeah.
University,
yeah.
University of Texas, yeah.
Data centers is an interesting one. I actually had a discussion with later this afternoon and tomorrow with a potential data center. Interesting for us when we look at our panels that they want to keep it cool, right? And our panel is really well insulated, so we kind of have to think about what we're doing there. But it's interesting.
Matt, how do you see sort of the general contractor's role?
Well, I think
changing?
there's definitely an appetite in the market for innovation, but I think speaking before about the way contracts are set up now, it's difficult to be the first one to do it. That as soon as the first project comes and it's proof of concept, then it seems like everyone wants to get on board, and then there's a lot of people I think want to be at the front end, but it's always scary to be the first one. So it's nice when you have and you were talking about it before, about how you have a client and a project team that's really on board and understands that, hey, we're doing this as a proof of concept for this project. And that's one of the goals for the project. And I think once you get those projects out of the way, then the industry is going to just jump on board and start going, because you don't necessarily want to be the first because it's scary, but you do want to be at the front to say that you're on the leading edge of things. So I think once if the Marriott's the first one, I'm sure it's going to be kicking off. Then it's proof of concept. People see it works. Consultants are going to be on board. Owners are going to be on board. But until then, there's on the consultant and owner side, we find sometimes it's, has this been done before?
Yeah.
And then getting that, but once it's been done, then it almost blows itself wide open.
Yeah.
And then everyone wants to do it.
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely a challenge. So, a year ago, we did our first small CRU, commercial retail unit, for Starbucks in Abbotsford. Before that, it had always been kind of internal test projects, right? I guess the previous iteration of the company had done some things in Saskatchewan, but as we were saying earlier, when you're in Vancouver, what we do in Saskatchewan doesn't matter 2 weeks, right? So, different climate, different. And since then, that developer has gone on, and we're now doing just about to start our 4th building in that same complex. That's been a real proof of concept for that particular vertical. The Marriott will be the proof of concept for the high-rise envelope panels, and I think that, and then the first project in New York State actually is a great one for us, because it's New York State. It's with a big consultant, and again, then there's an acceptance in the market. Okay, well, if you can do it there, you can do it anywhere. Right? That's a real hurdle to get through. I think the other thing that we've, as a startup in prefabrication, is we I don't know if everyone around the table's heard of Katera, but we've looked really closely at that and said, okay, what can we learn from
Plenty.
that? And I think part of that has been, okay, we do panels. That's what we. Yes, there's a demand for whole building solutions, but we're going to partner with the right people to do that. We're not going to try and just buy that and bring it all in house. That doesn't suit us. And then partnering with partnering with people in the local communities as our consultants and partners, rather than trying to do it all. Like, let's do what we do best and work that way. So that's been really, it's kind of core to the way we're approaching it. And then continual feedback, right? Every project, trying to take those lessons and learn them and continually improve. Just a thought.
So a lot of, especially in sort of Europe, the use of off-site is very housing focused, where that's clearly something you're actively sort of avoiding to start with. Is that because of the sort of the panelised system generally, or do you just not see the demand there compared to the sectors you are?
The demand is there. The demand is there. Like every week we get demands. I mean, there's you may have seen in the news about Lytton, which is a town that got completely destroyed with wildfires this summer. We've been approached in numerous kind of situations like that to help them rebuild, and we definitely want to help. We just we want to make sure that we're producing. We want to get our technology right, and we can't do everything all at once. I think that would be foolish of us as a startup. And so we're just picking our battles. And my personal opinion on it is that housing market, particularly the mid-rise and the single-family residential, where there's perhaps an interest in prefab, but it's highly competitive and it's highly customized, and does that really suit our model?
Just on your model and referring back to Katera, I mean, one of the mistakes they made, and they made a few, was they tried to expand geographically at a very, very fast rate. With your plants, I mean, how close do your projects need to be to the plant to make it work sensibly?
So that's a really good question, and something that we are kind of actively looking at. The plant here, is probably going to be able to service, when the borders back up, but service much of the West Coast. There's always going to be a sweet spot between keeping the plants full and distance travel to deliver and cost of delivery. We're still working that out. We're also thinking about where we place the plants in terms of its footprint. So, how far do we have to bring the core materials to the plant, as well as how far can we cover? The one in Philadelphia is probably going to, Pennsylvania is probably going to service kind of the New York area, and then one in Philadelphia a little bit further south. But I think we're definitely mindful of what happened if we go too quickly, and making sure that we do have the demand before we open the doors to the plant. We have an aggressive growth schedule, but I think we're very mindful of what's happened before. Right?
So I cut somebody off then. I sent you on there to just ask a question.
You were going to say something.
Sorry, did I cut you off? Because I needed to answer that question. Oh, just on Katera, I mean, they did a deal with Saudi Arabia, didn't they, to build 1 million homes?
Yeah.
So,
The perfect place to go if you're looking for cash quickly.
I think we want to be realistic. We have an aggressive growth schedule, but we don't want to overpromise.
So how are you trying to target industries that are typically repetitive facility? It comes to mind that with an aging population here in Canada, we are looking into the senior might get you in at the ground floor.
Mm-hmm.
And then the other piece I would say would be focusing on delivery methods. If you pay attention to the IPD
Mhm.
world, then
Yeah.
that's what it's all about,
Yeah.
is get the
Yeah.
innovation in at the beginning.
Yeah. Yeah. We are talking to BC Housing. We're talking to a number of public bodies. I mean, we've grown our kind of marketing sales team tremendously in the first 6 months of this year, with people from within the construction industry. I think when we started, we had a number of people from manufacturing, but not necessarily within the construction industry, and so they didn't have that network of contacts and people. So we really focused on building out that team, and then so that they're aware of that intelligence. That's really helped, and then being able to have the other benefit of that is that people like myself and others. Construction is it's very quick to smell something that smells a bit off, right? Is it you're smoking? And so to have people from within the construction industry able to speak to the product and speak genuinely and honestly has really helped the credibility, I think. And that it's a slow process. It's still very much a relationship piece as well. But yeah, and so back to the plant issue, we've changed our tack a little bit. I think we said we're going to open plants here, and here, and now we said no, we're going to build the sales pipeline before we decide whether we're going to open a plant, because that takes time, right? I think the other thing is you can't just turn on a switch and start producing panels, because the building process can take 18 months, 2 years from to get it through all of the various permits and development things, and so if we want to be in at the beginning, that's a year lag between us getting in on a project to it actually going a year at best, maybe even longer before it comes out of the plant. So.
Speaking as a salesman, it got me interested. Is your sales team, are they focusing on the architects or the general contractors?
Both.
Both, yeah.
And end clients too. Use Starbucks as an example, because everyone knows we're working with Starbucks. But we have relationships with Starbucks corporate office. We have relationships with a whole raft of developers that typically go in and develop those things, and then we have relationships with the designers that design those. So there's kind of 3 tiers there. Yeah.
But that network of relationships takes a long time to build,
yeah.
doesn't it? If you're in a new territory.
For sure. Yeah. And I think part of our success is that we've attracted some of the people that were linked to those industries that are now part of our team. So they bring those networks with them. So and we're not in direct competition, right? It's not like I went from associate engineering and joined Integral, and now I'm competing for the same. Like I went from a consultancy to a manufacturing business, so it's easier for us to kind of bring those networks across.
But one of the interesting things I think about construction is the business model, which for most of construction is sort of asset light. And of course, your model is the exact opposite, isn't it? You have to invest all this money in fixed assets and employ lots of people. It's a different mindset, isn't it?
Yeah, we're a manufacturer. We're not and that is a mindset I'm getting used to. We're a manufacturer. We're not a contractor or constructor. We're a manufacturer, and it's a different model. But I think that's the way the industry's got to go if it's going to be successful at prefabrication.
Well, I'm going to agree with you, because one of the differences between manufacturing and construction is construction relies on the market to come to them.
Yeah.
Here's an opportunity, would you like the price for it? Because you've got to persuade the market to come to you.
Yeah.
It's a very different problem.
It is and just as you were saying that, I'm reflecting. I think it was Steve Jobs who said they don't know that they need this or something. They don't know that they want this until they've got it in their hands, and then they realise they want it.
But I think you're also, you're a manufacturer, but you're also a coordinating professional, right? And that's how it is coming about, right? You're sort of taking that role of, of maybe where the architect would lead, you're leading, right? And you're bringing the architect and whoever else in, and so that's certainly a very different role from a manufacturer, right? Which is a single component part. You're actually acting as the so I think that's the biggest difference I see in what you're doing right now.
Yes, because it's not a widget, is it? You're not selling it's partly bespoke, and it has to fit in with the rest of the building, doesn't it?
Right.
You've got to coordinate thinking.
Yes, exactly.
Across the team.
It's a very technical sale for us, very technical sale, and I think. We think we've sometimes underestimated how technical it has to be and how many disciplines we have to interact with in the course of making that. So it's I don't know what the closest is. Precast industry, maybe.
But along those lines too, like you were mentioning, even in the precast industry, even locally, it's. There are at least a couple. It's not like there's just one. So have you found it? I can imagine it being difficult sometimes to try and get into a project where can be hesitancy to sole source something, especially something as big as the envelope, where even though we know there's not too many players in the market, but at least it seems like you're getting it's more competitive. You're getting value if there's at least, say, a handful of metal panels. So you don't specify like, okay, it needs to be these guys. But so I'd imagine. How have you been dealing with that challenge?
We touched on that when we were talking earlier on in the year, but it's tough. There isn't an obvious alternative. I think we've worked with on a couple of bids where we've come in as an alternate solution, where we've said, well, we'll match the performance. So you've specified the insulation value, you've specified the air tightness, you've specified. Okay, we'll match that. It's tough. We've lost a few because of that, because people say, well, we can't sole source it, and so we can't do that. And then we've done a lot of work with a couple of opportunities to really work through what the equivalent build-up would be. So if you're going to compare our system to a metal stud with batt and then continuous insulation and hard plank, the traditional kind of build-up, walk through with them how our system would compare, and had to kind of look at schedule, performance, and usually get independent reports on it from respected code consultants or building science and people, just to prove that it's equivalent.
Well, I can see the importance, I guess, of earlier in even earlier than you would think, because I'm imagining a situation where you have a promising project, but it gets to the point where the design's already progressed so far. It's like, look, we would have loved to use you, but we're so far down the line that we can't. We're not on this project. We're not going to switch everything.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. It's hard. That's the construction industry.
Oh, it is difficult. Yeah. But I suppose if you say you can match the spec, but if you take Stuart's point, the actual fact you can probably beat it, you guarantee that, well, you're definitely going to be airtight and thermal insulated. Then there's a knock-on effect to the M&E system. So there's going to be a saving there as well, and presumably there'll be a saving overall in energy usage, as well as not having to spend the money up front on a super duper furnace and massive aircon system if you don't need it.
Yeah, no, that's true. And we were actually working with a team right now where they're going to put in design build or amendment to the agreement specifying our product, including the improvement to the insulation value and the air tightness, because it reduces their mechanical and everything else. We're very cautious about how far we promise that, right? Because that could backfire if, let's say, someone cores through the wall or doesn't seal it right. Air tightness is last, it's your system. So we have to be careful about how far we extend ourselves in that respect too. Right? So
it also does open you up other avenues too, because you can have more people advocating too. Like you could have the mechanical consultants advocating for you. You could have a contractor advocating for schedule. So you do have. Yeah, I can see it being tough to get in there, but you also, it's not like you just have to sell one. There's only one person you can sell. It sounds like you could sell it to a few different people in the team, and then get enough. If you get a critical mass of mechanical engineer wants to do it, the contractor wants to do it, then the architect's okay with it, then that's when you can get in.
The installation method as well will be generally safer than more traditional methodologies, sort of slightly less working from height. You still obviously have to work from height, but less people, quicker.
I mean, you're lifting heavy things around.
But manufacturing generally is a safer environment than on site, so there's all those knock-on intangible sort of improvements.
Yeah, for sure.
Your point is very interesting for communication purposes, which is always the issue. Having a joint presentation, a collaborative one, would be really beneficial to have all of the components or experts together, just not yourself. That'd be kind of an interesting perspective or presentation, and that would attract different expertise on a larger scale, wouldn't it?
Yeah, for sure.
You mentioned the UK use case of zero lot lines as well, and I'm just thinking of a project we have right now that it's, you can see trying to get a finished product on the outside without having access, with maybe necessarily not being able to get. I mean, in a perfect world, everyone plays nice to the neighbors, but sometimes you can't get an agreement. So it's how do you build this from the inside of the building, but still have the finishes on the outside. So that I think that's, I'm sure you guys are well aware of that already, but that's from the constructability side. That I can see that being huge.
Yeah, we've looked at a few. We haven't actually been successful on any yet, probably because of all of the reasons that have been highlighted today. But I mean, we think we're biased, but we think it's eminently suitable to that. There's been a few where there's an extension to an existing on a zero lot line, and there's a blind face, flying panel.
I've got another question. Presumably, can the insulation be increased if you're in, particularly freezing cold places?
We can. So below 8 inches, it's really hard for us to get any sensible structure. We have to have a minimum amount of structure in the panel to lift it off the bed. Actually, the lifting is often the highest load on the panel when we're actually lifting it, and it's there's an amount of suction, so you have to overcome the suction to lift it off. 8 inches, so 8 inches is kind of our minimum, and there we had a pretty minimal continuous insulation. Beyond that, in theory, we could go up as thick as you want, 12, 14, 16 inches. There's a sweet spot in insulation, like where you increase insulation, and there's not, Stuart would know this better than I, but there's a sweet spot about, there's not enough benefit to keep on adding, but we can do that.
There was another question I've got around, you said that you've got the grout has got super flow characteristics. Whereas all the work I've ever done on geopolymers is the opposite. So you've obviously got a very clever mix.
Yes.
Which is...
I can't say to
that's the clever bit. Yeah, that is the clever bit.
Yeah, it's you have to come and touch and feel it, and there's a showroom 10 minutes away. structural engineer, I've seen a lot of concrete. The finish quality is superb to the surface of that. I've never seen a finish. You know, the closest I've come to, I don't know if you're familiar with the Gilia, but it's kind of that consistency. It's really quite something.
That's amazing, because the base thing is really sticky, isn't it?
Yeah.
That's one of the problems that had to be overcome with geopolymer concrete. It doesn't flow.
Yeah, so we managed to do it.
And
You've got $1 billion company, haven't you?
Do you see any other use cases for that, like even that just specific? Because that's obviously a component of your panel system, but it's thought of that as some other.
So people have asked us about alternatives to concrete, and we can make the ribs within the panel out of Nexite. You know, frankly, it's an expensive alternative to regular concrete, and so to just to pour it in volume just doesn't make sense. I think there's more things that we can explore as we evolve. We're looking at all kinds of different things that we can do to improve the performance of it and reduce the carbon footprint. I mean, it's already kind of lower than ordinary Portland, but we know that the cement industry is actively looking at lowering their footprint, and so we need to be one step ahead of that with our mixes. No, not at this current time, but I think we have definitely an interest. One of the most common questions that I get is, so how does it compare to the Eurocode for concrete or the CSA standard for concrete? And I said, well, it's not really. It's a polymer concrete, and it's a high strength, quick cure, and best suited for what we developed it for.
I think there's a code in prep, isn't there?
It was a couple of years ago. Yeah.
Well, I'm actually.
I was thinking that. What happened to that?
Yeah.
The UK were looking at a polymer concrete code.
Yeah, right.
Because they were looking at it for various things, tunnel lining and stuff like
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
But it went very quiet.
Are there any more questions?
Yeah, just one quick one. That's a relatively small standalone building. What size do you need? Is something that small you're looking for repetitiveness? Or?
Yeah. I mean, this is it's been great first projects for us. Small projects, we can get them done quickly. We're looking at some right now, which are 20,000, 30,000 square feet, rather than this, which is like 5,000 square feet. So we've got a project right now which is 10 of those all at once. So equivalent, there's a lot of square footage there. Yeah, and then obviously the bigger storage warehouses and things like that. The project that we're working on with all of this technology, I think the starting off small is a benefit to us because it means we can find out all the mistakes on something small rather than taking off something that's really big and complex. But
That's an important insight. Are there any more questions? Anyone else got anything burning we haven't covered?
One question, Mark. With the insulation panels, and some of your competitors use mineral wool.
yeah,
Is there a reason why EPS was used?
yeah, because of that bond between the outside kind of neck side skin and the EPS, we haven't found an insulation product that provides that same bond, and also we use it structurally. So to keep that thermal break, we actually the outside face of that neck side is actually there's nothing tying that back to the inside face except the EPS, and so we need the properties of the EPS to achieve that. We're constantly looking at alternatives, but we just haven't found anything. Mineral just doesn't have those same properties.
And then what would a typical R value be in a panel? Or
So a 10-inch panel. So the EPS Type 2 is about R of 4 per inch. Don't ask me what the U value is off the top of my head.
R40, less any thermal bridging, right?
And we went through this exercise. So that would be on a, that would be kind of your nominal R value. Our effective R over the system drops. Yes, so change R40 drops to about 27.7, which is still pretty good.
Yeah.
Which, when you look at sort of the buildings that we're doing today, the highest performing buildings, like larger scale buildings that we're doing to passive house standard, the walls are coming in round about that R25, level. So you're already at that level that you're going to get, that you can provide a building at a passive house level of performance, right? So, from that perspective, you wouldn't really need any more, right? Mm-hmm. Maybe in some colder climates,
Mm-hmm.
You can colder climates, smaller buildings, you might add a bit more, right? If you're building a house, the walls are more like R40 or R50, but in a community centre or multifamily housing, that's the levels that you would be at anyway.
Okay. Everyone satisfied that I've asked all their questions?
I had one more.
Oh, one more.
Did you say you do roof panels as well?
We do, yeah. We depends on the scale. Right now, the predominant demand for them is on these smaller units. We're finding it's useful there to provide the complete solution. We actually we have two types of roof panel. We can it's thicker, so typically 16 or 18 inches, and the simplest way for us to manufacture it is actually just use Q-deck, like a metal deck, so that we're fixing it to the roof structure in the same way, essentially. So, and then just lay a layer of Nexite, APS Nexite, and so then it will come to site as pre-made panels and drop it in, and then we fix it, do the seams on site.
It's kind of the same as the similar assembly, except the bottom's Q-deck.
Correct. Yeah. And what we can do like a regular panel with a Nexite facing, but what we're finding actually is that people come in and they're familiar with the look of a Q-deck, and I can fix to that. They come in and they look at a Nexite panel, and okay, what do we do now? Right, so.
Get my drywall screws out.
Yeah.
So is your Nexite the weather surface on a roof panel?
We have to put membrane on it. Yeah.
Do you pre-start it in the factory, or do you just lay it on site?
So to date we've done it on site. We are currently testing doing it in the plant because we think we get a better product. What we're finding is this is where construction industry, like developers and contractors have their preferred roofing systems, and so we've had a bit of a challenge kind of saying, well, we're going to give you this membrane that's going to be adhered, and then you're going to do the seams in this on and they're like, well, no, we're going to use what we've always used. We're going to use a TPO. We're going to use
just
this,
do the whole thing.
We do the whole thing, and so but we do believe that we would get a better product if we could apply most of it in the plant and then just do the seams on the side.
So what sort of spans do you have between structures for roof panel?
So with that Q-deck system, we can get up to kind of 10 feet on a 38 millimeter Q-deck because we actually use the panel for some composites. It was about double what you would typically get if you were just doing straight Q-deck. Because we do get some composite action from the next one.
So is that typically, the roof panels typically on ones where you're already doing the wall panels as well?
Yeah.
Okay. So you don't really have it, it's not really a separate product, it's more like kind of like an add-on if you want. If you're already doing roof wall panels, you could...
Yeah, I mean, we've never been approached just to do roof panels, to be honest. Yeah. It's usually you're going to do the walls, can you do the roof? Right. Not the other way around. Yeah.
Do you see, could you see a market where the roof is a standalone product or not as much as the walls?
Our experience has been that we just can't, it comes down to cost. We can't compete with the traditional built-up roof making, typically. So unless they want it as part of a complete building solution where everything's panelized and comes in as panels, it's hard for us to compete on the roof. Yeah.
Fair enough.
Go ask.
Just don't ask. Just
What I suggest we do is we've had a great debate. There's some lunch, I hope. Sounds like it's ready from the clatter of cutlery. We can continue the debate over some food. I thank everyone for their contributions, particularly Mark. It's been a fascinating presentation. It was a great discussion. And also thank you very much for all of your inputs. Thank you.
Thank you.